and it let out this blood-curdling, guttural scream.
On the side of the road, he sees a deer carcass and something eating on it, which he thought was a bear. And as the lights hit it, it stood up. And, like, this gives me chills talking about it. He said it stood up and it had the face of a man.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bigfoots of America podcast show. I'm your host, Bryan Sawyer, and this is episode 21. Today we're meeting up with Jake Goscicki. Now, Jake and I go back probably 2.5 years ago when we met on the set of another TV pilot show called Pizza Monster that we were doing. And that's when I got to hear Jake give his accounts of his Bigfoot sightings and his other encounters in his life. So Jake has been a Bigfoot enthusiast for quite some time now, and I'm really anxious to hear his point of view. So without further ado, we'll get Jake into the studio here.
Hey, Bryan.
Hey, Jake. Hey, good to see you, my man. How's everything going?
Oh, everything's going great. Thank you. And thank you for bringing me on tonight. This is pretty incredible. Happy to be here.
Okay, great, man. Yeah, so we had met up on the set of Pizza Monster. That was when I also met Aaron Young and you and BFRO member Jim Sherman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were out in Gladwin, at a pizza joint, and we're kind of taste testing the pizza, and yeah, man, that was great, and I look forward to that coming out. I hear that's still going to come out, so looking forward to that. Now I got some information for you. I am going back to Gladwin soon. I have I have four more eyewitnesses, and one was an encounter just a couple of weeks ago up there by the Tobacco River, and there's a place called something the World's End or something. But right in that area by the Tobacco River, a couple of gals saw a Sasquatch walking down, of course, and we know this, walking down next to the power lines. And we know that railroad tracks and power lines, when they're cleared out like that, those make easy pathways for the Bigfoots. Because I just personally think that they get sick of walking through the forest all the time. So anytime they've got a clear path to walk, they take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. How I don't want to take away from the episode, but how recent are we talking? Like, is this like within a year or?
Yeah, no. Within, I think, the last couple of weeks. Her name is Nora Scott. So yeah, we're gonna do a full TV pilot series, the Bigfoots of Michigan episode with her for season 3. Actually, I just got off the phone with her 2 nights ago, so we're just got to schedule a date, and then we'll get up there. And then there's another gentleman who was just driving in the same area, and big black Sasquatch walked out of the forest, across the dirt road, and back into the forest. So so 1, 2, 3, and then my other friend, I can't give out the location, Cheryl Green, I believe that's where she's at. So more sightings, and she has a whole history of Sasquatch with her, and hers are wonderful because they actually kept her from being accosted or possibly even raped by some boys back when she was a child. And these Sasquatch were throwing stones at the boys and chased them off, and then would walk when Cheryl Green was a girl and walking home from school. The Sasquatch would parallel her and kind of protect her. And so she's had a lifelong relationship with them. So I'm anxious to do that episode as well. And that brings into the subject of what people believe Sasquatch is. There are so many different beliefs. I got a little list here right now. Uh, Gigantopithecus, and that's fine. Ancient human Indian tribe, possibly their own species. Miners of the star people. So the star people drop them off to be miners to get the minerals from the earth to give to the star people for their craft or whatever, or the star people themselves. We have the, of course, yeah, and that goes along with the ancient aliens narrative. And then there was Enki from the Epic of Gilgamesh narrative. Some believe they're the descendants of Cain from the Bible, or they're Nephilim or Nephilim hybrids. So yeah, just animals, But now I heard recently that there's a whole nother species of Neanderthals that they've discovered. Me personally, I think they're their own species somehow, maybe with some kind of paranormal abilities. But with all that said, let's jump in to what you think they are, and go ahead, start from the beginning, like when you had your first sighting and all of that, because Jake, this is your episode, so go for it.
Yeah. Well, first off, I agree to your point for the most part. I definitely feel like they are more either ancient humanoid or somewhere closely related to humans, like close enough that, and this can be a whole different tangent, but there's been all the times that people have found either hair strands or they have found blood or they found anything and it comes back as human DNA or contaminated with human DNA. Could it be that that's just how close they are, that we don't have good enough equipment yet to tell the difference? I mean, one, we don't have a novel species regardless, so it's going to be near impossible for us to just get DNA alone and say, hey, boom, this is a new species that we don't know what it is. But could they be so closely related to us that our equipment shows human when in fact it's not human at all? It's just that closely related. So I definitely feel like that's more what it is. I do think that they're, whether it's supernatural specifically, I think there's some sort of higher power there. I mean, there kind of is with all of us, right? When we think about energy and how energy is reflected even through the human body, there's a greater meaning somewhere. You can tie that to religion, or you could tie it to ancient aliens. You can really tie it to whatever you want, depending on who you are, who's speaking, and who's thinking about it. But in my mind, I'm thinking somewhere along human, related somewhere, possibly supernatural, either abilities or a connection to a higher level that we just don't understand. But that kind of clears up right away my thoughts on what the species is. How I got
Good
into
stuff.
this. Yeah, thank you. Some people might agree, some people might not, but we all have the right to our own opinion, right? So
That's right. That's right.
But how I got into this, it's really has been, I'm 30 years old this year, and I think probably as early as about 6 or 7, I remember hearing stories from my grandfather of not really encounter stories, but more so just he was always a woodsman. He was a big time outdoorsman, big time hunter his whole life. And he loved to come back from his hunting trips and just share, what happened. From that, I grew up huge into the outdoors. I love the wilderness of all kind. I love, even today when we're driving up north, like every time I see a deer, roll down the window and point, like I haven't seen a million of them now. But it's that connection to the woods. It's that connection to animals that I've always loved. So I remember him talking about these giant hair-covered apes. And I don't remember how old I was, but I know for a fact he showed me the Patterson-Gimlin film at some point in my childhood, because I remember when I saw it in a book at a school library, like I knew immediately what it was. It connected in my mind. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. So-and-so showed me. But through that, it just kind of evolved, and it really hit a peak for me around, I think I would have been 15, of when I had and I'm just going to say potential, not to make anybody upset that's going to listen to this, but I'm going to say a possible potential Bigfoot encounter. It happened just outside of the city of Atlanta, which is in Montmorency County. It's the northern lower peninsula. The same grandfather that shared all these stories with me, he lives up there, still lives up there today with my grandmother. And They're in a very small rural community, which all of them are up there. Anybody that's familiar with that area, it's the classic northern Michigan. They're, 15, 20 minutes from the nearest store. And even that store is not really a store when you have like your Walmart and stuff. Like they're about an hour from a Walmart. So
Yeah, I've been there, brother. I've been there, man, a couple of
they're
times.
out there. They're out in the sticks. You can definitely get lost out there on some of those roads. And they're in a little like subdivision. There's probably today, I say about 10. Back there, and there may have been like 15 to 20 houses in this little multi-road cul-de-sac, if you want to call it that. But what we would do, because we went up there so often, is I would get bored as a kid. I can't just sit around all day in this double wide. I got to go and I got to explore. So they live about a half mile from the nearest lake. So I would always walk down to the boat launch, and that's how I would kill time. Just grab a little walking stick and just go take a hike. And one of the nights we were up there, it was probably July. Well, it had to have been July. I was on summer break. We went up there for the 4th, so it was around that time. And I remember coming back from the boat launch, and the road before, like that you take up to get to theirs is a T. Approaching the T, I can see the stop sign. I keep hearing rustling off to what would be my left. And like I said, love animals. So I'm looking, thinking it's a deer. I'm not seeing nothing. Continue on my walk, but that noise just keeps getting louder. Well, suddenly, of me walking and looking, I see this outline of what I assume at the time is a bear. It's off the ground enough that I can see it and I can tell something's there, but it's still small enough and it's dark in shape, or dark in color, excuse me, that I'm assuming, okay, it's got to be a black bear. I've seen them up here before at this time. I just keep my eyes on it and keep walking because I'm like, it's not good for me to be in the woods with a bear this close. I will get to the distance in a moment, because actually I went back this year and got, like, to me anyway, from what I can remember, I'm down to like the foot of how far away this thing was, I believe. But I'm looking at this thing and I'm walking and it stands up. And when it stood up, I'm kind of getting like shaky thinking about it right now. But when it stood up, it looked like if I was standing right now. Like it had a head and went into these shoulders. It didn't have much of a neck, but just this giant head that went into these massive shoulders. For reference, like me, again, I'm 30. I'm 6'4". I'm about 265, 270 pounds. Like I'm a pretty big guy. When I was 15, I was already like 6'1", 6'2". And I was probably close to what I am now. I've always been a big kid my whole life. So, like, my size hasn't changed much even from then. And this thing, like, from the distance looked like if it wanted to, it could just snap me in half. Like, it was massive.
Wow.
So when it stands up, I'm thinking, geez, that's a huge bear. Like, I froze, and then I started walking. Like, my steps and my strides started picking up and getting faster. But I'm still like in amazement because I'm like, it doesn't look like a bear. Well, finally in my mind was like, yeah, it's not a bear, because it started to take a couple steps. So when it took a couple steps, I didn't see like arm swing, but I could tell the arms were down by its side. So it wasn't out in front like paws. It was like how a human would be standing in the woods. Took 2, 3, maybe even 4 steps, and then dropped down to all fours, and I could see this thing just book it. Like, it was going away from me, thank God, but it started just flying through the woods, like on all fours. And you could tell, kind of like when a human's hunched over, it didn't look natural, but the thing looked fluid when it was moving away from me. At that point, when it dropped down, I could see it moving away. I turned my head and I sprinted, and obviously I survived. Nothing happened to me. But I say all that to say, and what I mentioned previously is I went up this past year. For the first time, I actually went back to the exact spot, put myself in it, walked into the woods, like stood at the road. And I'm like, okay, all right. I walk in, I find what I think is a close thing, and measured it off. It was like 35 yards from the road to where I believe this thing was standing. Now, again, it's 15 years ago, but 15 years up there, not much has changed. Like, there's no logging in that area. So all the trees are essentially the exact same. All the shrubbery is the exact same. It was a really kind of freaky experience to be there for the first time, because we visited them a lot since then. Obviously, they lived there, but I never took that same road again. Like, I would walk down to the boat launch, but even as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, I always had a knife with me at that point. And I never did prior. I usually just took a bigger walking stick because we never saw anything. The most I ever saw was a deer or maybe a fox or something, you know. Never saw like a coyote, never saw a bear when I was out walking until that day of I saw whatever it is that I saw. And when I was a kid, I was very stern and I was like, yeah, I had a Bigfoot encounter. And the funny thing is I never told anybody. Like I never even told my family. I didn't tell my grandfather, the one that shared the stories with me. And I don't really know why. I don't know if it was the fear of ridicule or if it was just me second guessing myself for so long, which even today I still second guess myself because I try to think realistically and logically as much as I can anyway. But I'll be honest with you, the older I get and the more podcasts I listen to like yours and so many others, and I keep seeing all these different people that constantly have like the same stories or similar stories. The areas they're in for the large part are similar to exactly where I am. And I'm starting to like, why couldn't I have? I mean, I truly believe those things are out there. So what's stopping me from seeing one? Like in no way do I think I'm special enough or I deserve to see it, how some people feel. I kind of almost think of it as a curse in a weird way because it's put me on this path of like, trying to find the answers to my own sighting, which is why I've done everything else that I've done of trying to get into the field. Is it all stems back to trying to answer that one question and have another experience that I can confidently say, all right, I just experienced it. And regardless of what happened 15 years ago, I just saw one today. This is it for me. Like I'm set, you know?
Yeah, I think even you just talking about it is so important because with all of these podcasts, it's freeing people up to be confident in their sightings to talk about it. Because for me, everything I've been learning over the past 2, 3 years now is that there are way more of these things than we ever imagined possible. You know, my train of thought getting into this was, well, yeah, there might be 100 in the state of Michigan. They're probably mainly out west and all of that. But now, as I travel the state, um, first of all, I almost can't keep up with it. So everybody out there who we scheduled or we've talked something, thank you very much for being patient with me. We will get there eventually. It's just that there's way more sightings than I ever imagined. There's it's blown my mind just by me, and you've probably heard me talk about it. You know, I live in what I call the Bigfoot Triangle. Right now, I off the top of my head, I could rattle off 5 to 10 sightings just in my area, and these are not going back um, years and decades. These are pretty current in the last 5 years. In fact, while the Monroe monster happened, the new sighting, we'll talk about that in a moment. Um, People are talking about the Monroe one. We just had another sighting here in Croswell that I'm waiting. I've got my team working on it. Jerry Lentz is trying to locate the eyewitness, so that's going around town. And I know because I know where two clans are right now. And people are, what do you mean? Yes, I know where two clans are right now. Check out the River Walkers with Matthew Sexton. Check out episode 1 with Jim Ingram from season 1. Check out episode 11 from our season 2, called The Watchers from Among the Trees. I believe I've even had activity here at my house. So these beings or creatures, whatever you want to call them, they're much more prevalent and there's a bigger population than we ever imagined. But with that said, let's talk about, because I haven't talked about it. I've had a ton of people contact me, but let's talk about the Monroe monster that just happened, in the past week or two down in Monroe County, Monroe City, actually, right? So
Yeah.
tell us what you know about that, and then there's a couple of. I'm looking at the article right now from mlive.com, and I've got something I want to input as you go. But go ahead and tell us what you know about the recent sighting of what I would call the new Monroe monster.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wish I was as versed as I used to be, Brian. I mean, you obviously have a ton of pull. You have a ton of connections in this community, right? You get people that come to you probably every day and want to share their stories. I am working, my friend and I, who I've done previous projects with, I'm working on trying to find the guy that submitted the report, to contact him. Um,
Fantastic.
just to pick his brain, honestly. I mean, I don't have a podcast of my own. We do things here and there for YouTube. I'm still editing some different paranormal videos as we speak now that I hope to see the light of day. But as you know, super busy guy with my career, my family, everything else. So I
Yep.
wish I could put more time towards it. But regardless of that, I've probably read the different articles, and I read specifically the report that's on BFRO probably 10 or 11 times now. For those that don't know, I'm legit. I'm probably 30 minutes drive from Monroe. Like, I'm very close. I'm in Wayne County. So I'm super close to where the sighting is. Funny enough, the day that it hit and all the news articles blew up, I got a text from my friend while I'm at work. And he said, "What are you doing tonight?" And just sent me a link to the article. And I was like, "Oh, if I could, I'd be down there looking right now."
Right,
But
right. I know the area. My
yeah,
girlfriend's daughter actually lives right. I'm not kidding you. 5 minutes at tops, right? So I
okay,
know the whole area. I know the train tracks. I know how it all connects to Lake Erie. But go ahead. Yeah, keep going.
yeah. Well, like I was going to bring that up too. I'm looking at satellite images. I'm going on different websites. I'm going on a map system that I have downloaded on my computer, like one that's not available online, more of a high resolution one. But from knowing the area how populated it is,
Yep.
and that stood out to me so much because I've heard the people, and it's a point I want to bring up in a little bit. But there's a report that a guy that we both know, a mutual friend of ours, he took um, years ago from the airport. And when I first read that, I was like, that can't be true. Like, those people have to hear something else. And there's recordings that are out there that he gathered from that site. And I know just from living here, I'm like, there's no way that a creature that big could live in a popular area like this and not be seen. But you have a person that one of the articles I read said he's not an enthusiast. He didn't believe in it at all. He actually questioned his son for a little while on, are you sure you saw what you saw? And it goes back and forth. And if you have somebody like that coming forward of saying, screw it, there's no other explanation I have, and they live that close to a city, like, I guess why not? Why couldn't they survive? You don't need that much land for something like this to, one, stay hidden, and two, just survive. I think
Yeah.
people, honestly, I feel like we walk around with our heads buried in our phones so much anyway. They could probably see one themselves and be like, "Yeah, I don't know what that was. There's some figure back there. What's on Facebook? What's on Twitter?" Like,
Right,
half the
right.
people, they just don't even care anymore. So when I started seeing like what the area was and looking at those maps, like I said, reading the article, I was shocked, and then looking at those maps, I'm like, yeah, that's it. They probably saw exactly what they're saying they saw.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, so let's break down the details. They are bow fishing. Okay, it's in the Plum Creek area. Knowing the railroad tracks like I do, then let's talk about the history. So let's rewind. Let's go back to 1812, the War of 1812, when the British and the American are fighting in that area. They're fighting in Monroe, which used to be, I believe, used to be called Frenchtown.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you've got Americans with some Native Americans fighting against the British and some Native Americans. Okay. Well, while they're fighting in one of the forts in that area, there are, and this is in some of the soldiers' journals. Now, this is Scott Brush, a good friend of mine, Val Savala, big shout out to them. They've got the information much more than I do. But basically, while this War of 1812 is going on in that Monroe slash Frenchtown area, there are Sasquatch coming up and climbing over the walls and stealing the soldiers' supplies, stealing their food, and then retreating back. What is the key to that area? So this is back in 1812. It is the River Raisin. Now, the River Raisin, I forget the original name of the River Raisin, but it's called the River Raisin since the War of 1812 because of all the blood that was in the water from the war. But if you track the River Raisin, it goes back all the way basically, I think it's Manchester, north of Adrian, up into the Waterloo State Game area. That's where Valsavala had a sightings. That is a hot spot in Michigan. So, in my opinion, these Bigfoot have always been in that area and have utilized the river raisin to follow it down into the Lake Erie area. Okay, so then go to 1963 to 1965, where they've had a dozen plus, around 15 different supposed sightings of the Monroe Monster. One of them is a woman and her daughter who I believe they ran into. A Sasquatch, and the Sasquatch reached through the car window and hit the girl. I think she even had a black eye, grabbed her hair, whatever. And one of the interesting facts about that, she said whenever she felt this thing, because it was reaching in, kind of beating her up a little bit, its hairs felt quilly. Almost not as much as a porcupine, but very sharp and quilly, and so she could feel that. But I think Christine Van Acker was her name. Trying to find my notes on it. But so you've got, and then there was a lot of, I think a lot of people, maybe one guy got in a costume that they attributed to it, and then a bunch of people just flocked down there from the original sightings. But to me, this all correlates together. It's all together. It is a history, the War of 1812, then the sightings from 1963 to 1965. It is, and this time of the year, I believe the recent sighting has to do everything with the Bigfoot love fish. They love fish. From all my investigations, man, stealing fish off of people's lines, coming up behind them. Aaron Spencer, he was chased off. They stole the fish off his line. Matthew Sexton will on purposely get a string of fish and leave them for him, and they will come up behind him and take his string of fish. So I believe they just love fish. So that's number one. They always have to be around water. I believe it's not only the water intake because they're such large, durable creatures. They need huge amounts of water intake, but that's where all their food is at. The deer, from beavers to raccoons, they will pluck a squirrel off a tree and take a bite out of it from all the things I'm learning. So that is basically a highway, is the point I'm trying to make. The river raisin down to how it connects with Lake Erie. Then you throw in the railroad tracks. So these guys were both fishing, and this is me paraphrasing and going by, I've read the article as well. They're bow fishing, and what's interesting to me, and I don't know if anybody else picked up on this fact, is I'm going to read part of the M Live article, and this is just my opinion, and of course I could be dead wrong. Is that the dogs initially? So it says the father and the son, they were bow fishing near Plum Creek and the railroad bridges. When his dogs, here's the key. When his dog startled something bedding in the marsh. Right there, my bells went off because of everything I've been learning. I've got an area up here where they nest, okay? A sibwing on the Saginaw Bay. There's a whole nother clan up there. And there'll be more of that coming in the future episodes. But they love to bed in the marsh, and like Matt Moneymaker said, they eat the cattails and they eat the deer in the wintertime. But here's the thing that went off in my brain is that this man, so the father and son, bow fishing, Plum Creek, they said his dogs startled something bedding in the marsh. Okay? That tells me a family of Bigfoot. Now, when there's a family of Bigfoot, they usually have at least one of the members called a watcher awake in the daytime watching, making sure that people or threats don't get too close to the family. So I'm figuring most of the family might have been sleeping in this area in the marsh, and the dogs started heading in that direction, and they startled something in the marsh bedding down, and then the watcher up in the tree, which was 10 foot up in the tree, the watcher Sasquatch, possibly the alpha male, jumps down from 10 feet up in the tree, and that distracts the dogs and lures the dogs away from the rest of the Bigfoot family. And they chase after the what I call the watcher up over the railroad tracks. And because then when they followed it a little bit, they heard it, coming up behind them. Now that could have been more family members of the Bigfoot family that were bedding down in the marsh. So there could have been multiple, or it could have been because they're so fast, this Bigfoot could have circled back around them. So I hadn't heard that narrative before, but just from everything I've been learning, you rarely are going to catch a Sasquatch that's alone. You might see a single Sasquatch, but these things can hear us, they can smell us, they can see us before we even get in the area. And that's part of the reason they have watchers. So, in my opinion, and I could be totally wrong, I was fascinated by that. How the dog startled something in the marsh, and then, because it goes on to say, um, I want to make sure I give them credit. His dog startled something bedding in the marsh. Okay. I heard a rustling in a tree to the left. Okay, and a huge thud hitting the ground from the tree. A big, heavy animal hit the ground and crouched, started moving towards me through the brush. The man's account read, "My dogs fired off from the right towards the creature." So the dogs were headed towards that bedding spot in the marsh, and then they got distracted by this other one that jumped down out of the tree. And then this Bigfoot, the watcher, lured the dogs away to give the rest of the Bigfoot family time to kind of wake up or recover, whatever. But that's just me inputting what I see here, because me, I get all deep into this subject. Yeah, and they followed it so far, and he said we walked back in there, but heard something crunching on the ground behind us, so we left. So it's almost like dogs head to the bedding spot. The watcher jumps down, distracts them, lures the dogs off. They go after it. The next thing they know, there's something behind them. That's when the fear comes in and they get out of there. And that's usually how it happens. And like I said, I could be totally wrong, but that's usually how it happens. You see one, and the next thing you know, you are surrounded. Because my eyewitness, I'm not allowed to say his name. He works for the government, and he doesn't want his reputation tarnished at all. But up by Sibling, on the Saginaw Bay, Fish Point is the area as well. There are a ton of fragmites, cattails. It's also where Giles LaFave had his encounter where he was surrounded and paralleled and ushered out. There's a whole clan back in there. And boy, you get too close. What my eyewitness is telling me, he said they surrounded him and ushered him out, said he's never been so scared in his whole life. So like this recent Monroe sighting, it's like all of a sudden the fear sets in and you're getting out of there. So, anyways, I didn't mean to weigh you down with all that
Yeah.
information, but I'm reading all this and my mind is rolling. This is how they work, man. So it's almost like you, of course they could kill us on a whim. Um, but on the other hand, they don't. I have another private location out here, and this is episode 11 of season 2, called The Watchers Among the Trees, where I've got the one on thermal. We measured it the next morning to be 8 to 9 feet tall. But like, it sounds corny, but I give the Bigfoot credit because we are right in their nesting area, and all they did was kind of move out and grunt. We found the footprints, we heard the tree snaps. We got a picture of the one watching us from the trees. Got to get it on thermal, and then all the grunts we heard. But you go through there, and I wasn't allowed to film the whole area, but it was amazing. It was almost like a house. You know how you have your house and you and your wife have a bedroom, and then your daughters or whoever, your family members, each have their own bedrooms. This is how this location was set up. There were like these little huts. What was amazing too is I'd been there multiple times, and the landowners had told me, hey, we don't know where this brush pile came from, and it was broken off pine branches, right? The next time I go there, they're gone and they're made in a hut type shape. Yeah, so if you watch that episode, you can see, I think I showed a couple of the huts, and they're almost like these cave things where the branches and the trees are just kind of woven together, and you can go inside, and it's almost like their own little bedrooms where they sleep or whatever. And then I also, oh my gosh, I wish when you're on the subject, there is also so much disappointing evidence that you can't show or whatever. Um, and I respect this guy. I respect these people so much for letting me even come out. But like I've heard the audio from this land, and it sounds just like the Sierra sounds. And the landowner is interacting with the Sasquatch, and the Sasquatch are kind of whooping and hollering and talking to samurai talk to each other, and the landowner kind of chimes in, and they don't really recognize him the first time, but the second time the landowner chimes in, you can hear the Sasquatch recognize that it's not one of them, and they get a little bit kind of pissed off. So man, yeah, so big shout out to the landowners. I can't wait to get out there again. They're gonna let me come out again. But yeah, so back to the Monroe Monster, I'm like, that's how I think now. When I used to want to just, oh, I hope I see one walking across the road, it's like, no, let's go back. These creatures are masters of the forest. They know when we're in their location even before we do, and they are way ahead of us. So I think this latest Monroe monster sighting, there might have been more than just the one that they saw. There might have been a whole family that was nested in that marshland that the dogs had startled. Anyways, go ahead. You can talk now. I'm kind of filling you up with all this stuff. You've had some
Hey,
other
that's fine. I
possible
love it.
encounters too.
Well, I love that you were talking about which I agree with you, but the highway of the river system. Um,
Yeah.
and historically, I think the one in Monroe, because you brought up Val, so shout out Val. I love that guy.
Oh,
He helped me a
awesome.
lot years ago. Um, but one of his accounts that he shared was I don't remember the year, but a family in Monroe, they had one like trapped in their barn, I believe, and it was a big cover
Oh,
up with the police down there. Wasn't that Monroe County?
oh, I don't
I
know. I don't know
want
if I'm
I
familiar.
want I want to say it was. I believe, and don't quote me, anybody out there, but I believe the story was that a family was dealing with, this Bigfoot that kept coming around, basically being a nuisance, and eventually they ended up trapping it like in the barn. I don't know if it was sleeping in there, and the family just like did shut the door and got the better of them or what, but I swear Val shared that story with me, and it turned out to be a big thing, like with the local cops that came out, and the FBI ended up coming out, and they like shut the whole process down.
Oh,
That's a whole
wow.
different tangent we could get on, but I
That
get
reminds me of the
you know
Randy Kutera sighting as well a little bit. No, but I've heard of stories where people find them in their barns. Go ahead. Didn't
yeah.
mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. It just adds yet again to everything that you've already said about Monroe and the history there, dating all the way back to as early as when they were writing the history down. But yeah, the other encounters, which God, this subject sometimes gets me so frustrated because it's like I wish I could have everybody with me, or I wish I had things recording at that time. So you, with
Yeah.
your history in acting, you know how it is. Like eventually you could work all day and then you're finally like, you know what? I need to take a break. Let's just relax, cut the cameras. And if you're doing something like this, you know that's when the best stuff's gonna happen. Is like
Oh, for sure.
it is what it
Yeah.
is, right?
Oh, for
So
sure. And go ahead.
you can go ahead. I'm going off on a story. So if you got something to add, feel free, by all means.
Well, and it's tough, Jake, because you're a filmmaker as well, and so we kind of understand each other that this is one of the toughest subjects in the world because, like, if you go to, because I was just talking about a guy, I was talking with a guy before we got on here, Greg Smith, who's going to take me out to the Waterloo State Game area. I'm hopefully going to get out there with Val Savala and do an episode with Val and Bob Daigle. We're talking about that as well. Um, what's so tough about this is you and I are knowers. You know, everyone we talk about on here, Val Savella, we all know, Greg Smith, we all know these things exist, but then there's a downside to the general population who ridicule us or whoever. It doesn't bother me, but there are a lot of people that have been ridiculed, and so now they keep their mouth shut when, for me, I want to get the information out. I'm not looking to run the show here in Michigan. I'm looking more to bring people together so we have a full presentation that these things do exist. But with that said, you and I, as filmmakers, this is the hardest subject because unless you have some kind of footage that rivals the Patterson Gimlin film or the Paul Freeman footage, you know, you're almost, you know, crap out of luck, so to speak. People don't believe you. You know, that was a bear. You know, everyone pawns it off on a bear. And so this is a difficult subject. So I've determined in myself, look, I'm going to deal with this in a serious nature, but also try to have a little bit of fun with it. So go ahead with your story. I'm looking
Yeah.
at a map right now because I want to make sure what I'm saying is correct, even though I've checked it out. That's the town I was looking for. So okay, so I'm looking at the river system. This river Raisin. So Munson Park, I believe, is the park where Scott Brush has had his sightings. But if you, that's it, man. That's it. So okay, there's where my girlfriend's daughter lives, and if you check out this whole waterway system, and right where there's Plum Creek and the marshes and all that, this river Raisin pours into Lake Erie, which is Brest Bay, Brest Bay. Interesting. But yeah, you can follow back. There's the River Raisin National Battlefield Park that goes through. You head out to Munson Park where there's been sightings. You keep going on the River Raisin, and the town I couldn't remember where there's been other sightings is Dundee. Okay.
Yeah.
Then it branches off and it goes south, but it keeps heading west. And there it is, man. Up towards Ann Arbor. What is the one more town I'm looking for? Manchester. That's it.
Yeah.
My girlfriend has property in Adrian, so we go through Manchester a lot. And the River Raisin cuts through there. I'm right in downtown almost. And I'm like, you know, when you drive through an area and you go, you get that squatchy feeling. And at that time, when I first felt like that, felt that when I was there in Manchester, I didn't realize that I would later learn from Val Savalla and Greg Smith and so many others about the Waterloo State Game Area. And then you just look at the whole Pinckney recreation area. It is just so full of Bigfoot and Sasquatch. I mean, if you look at Val Savalla's podcast episode, I think that's 12, 11 and 12 maybe. Don't quote me. But he has that wonderful picture of that almost cinnamon or light reddish color Sasquatch up in the tree, man. And that's
Yeah.
right from the Waterloo State Game Area. And that all leads down the River Raisin, all connects all those waterways right down through Monroe. And then you've got the 1812 sightings, the Monroe Monster 1963 to 65, and then the recent. That's why they're there. There's just more people now to add to the amount of sightings. I'm surprised there haven't been more sightings, but these things move in the darkness, you know. Really, who's out at 2, 3 in the morning driving around? And then the episode before you, which is episode 20 with Ernie Davio, is going to be released today or tomorrow. If you watch that podcast episode, you realize how intelligent these things are. So if it's 3 in the morning, Jake, I could probably I could walk as far as I want to, at least where I'm at, in the darkness and never be seen by a soul. If I see headlights coming, I'm just going to stand still for a moment, or I'm going to duck behind a tree. No one's ever going to see me. So you throw in the fact that these beings, these creatures are masters of the forest. I get it why there haven't been more sightings. But what
Yeah.
happens? This guy's dogs smell something. They've got just higher senses than we do. They start heading for something. The watcher hops out of the tree. I'm just amazed. I love this subject, my brother. Go ahead. Want to say anything
I,
you want to say? You got me on a tangent.
that's all right, though. That's always the best. That makes the best podcast. But I love the saying you just said, the masters of the woods. I love that idea that, like, think about when you're in your house. And one of the best things I heard somebody say was, if somebody breaks in your house and it's at night, kill the lights because you know your house. That stranger has no idea. They know where the trees are at. They know where the shrubbery's at. Like, regardless of how good they can see in the dark, how long do they spend in this area? Like, I mean, I'm open to somewhat migration. I'm open to the idea that they definitely move. I don't think they just stay in like a square mile, because if they did, I feel like we'd already, like, the world would know by now. They have to
Right.
move somewhat, but there's pockets of these forests that these things live in, and it's just like your house. They are so familiar with everything around them that you're right. You go out there, even as a human, and stand still. Headlights hit you. Nobody's going to second guess you, unless you're like 3 feet from their car and you spook them. But if you're 10 feet off the road in a wood line, they're not even going to know you're there. They'll just drive right away. So,
Yep. And
it's,
yeah, and that goes along the lines with what Greg Smith, and I always try to give shout out to people's. I learned stuff. Greg Smith and Matthew Sexton, they pointed out that, like you're just saying, they actually, it might not necessarily be migration, or it might, but they definitely rotate areas where they stay because they don't want to deplete all the resources like the deer population. They'll maybe stay in a place for so long and then move to another place. Greg Smith says he believes they could rotate every 2 to 3 years. Matthew Sexton believes they'll rotate even in a year. They'll rotate to 2 or 3 different places.
that would definitely make sense. I mean, if you start breaking down and looking at some of the different sightings, and you really have time to analyze, you can see on a map where certain places are better at what time of year. There's definitely areas, even in Michigan, that are like, okay, if you want a real shot, you better be out there in the fall, or you better be over
Mhm.
here in the spring. Like, it's easy to see just going off of what other people say. And to add to that, speaking of Val, because I got the chance to, years ago, I tried to do my own podcast. Let's just say it didn't work out. It's not for me.
Okay.
But I got the chance to speak to Val, and him and I probably had a 3.5 an hour long conversation, and he was fantastic. But he put me on to the Waterloo area, and I've spent some time in the Pinckney Rec area, and it's definitely squatchy, to say the least. But when we went to Waterloo specifically, went a little farther west, in a single night, and this is what I was mentioning before when I said your best work happens when the cameras are off, is we got whistles responding back to my whistles. We got what sounded like mouth pops or even claps, because to me they sound so similar. But they were doing that in response to us. And then the biggest thing that I got that, pardon my language, but almost made me shit my pants, and we left after this happened. We were like, you know what? I'm not screwing around anymore. Like, I've had enough tonight. We were out there for several hours. This is all like 4 a.m. So, but I just am going to say speech, and I don't know what kind of speech. It was definitely like jumbled, but it was almost like a super deep gruttal, like something yelled like agru. Like, it wasn't a grunt, but it was like they were trying to say something. And it almost sounded like, I had the benefit when I met my wife, when her grandmother was alive, she was a mute. So she was deaf mute her whole life. And to me, it sounded like when she would get really excited, she would like almost laugh and try to say something, but she physically couldn't. It sounded like that, but almost as like an old male figure that hasn't had water in a few days. Try to envision that, and just that like, ah sound, like super loud, somewhat close, scared the shit out of both of us. I was with my friend. We kind of like looked at each other like, what the hell made that noise. And this is after the whistles that we did. This was after 2 different mouth pops, and a couple minutes passed, and I just did a deeper like howl the best I could. And it sounded more like a wolf howl, but I did that, and about a minute passed, and we heard that sound, and we bolted out of the woods faster than I've left an area. Like, I've been back there one time since, and it was during the day, and it's like, I think I've finally gotten to the point, because that was probably 3 years ago now, 2.5, 3 years ago that happened. I'm at the point now where I feel like I'm ready to return to see if I can have it happen again. But I don't know. It was a weird experience. It was the weirdest experience I've had in the woods in quite a long time.
Well, please let me go with you. If you go, because I have not been to the Waterloo State Game Area yet. Please let me go if you can.
Yeah.
I'll meet you there. I'll do whatever it takes. Yeah, I would love to get out there. That is exactly actually what I heard. Um, if you watch episode 10, Matthew Sexton, the River Walkers, we spent the night there, and I believe I heard the one talk, and it's so low. It's a lower tone frequency, volume, however you want to say it, than anything I've ever heard before. Like, you hear a big diesel Mack truck off in the distance, how low those are.
Mm-hmm.
This was lower than that. And it was close to our tents. And I always do this, but I can't add up to it. It's like a so much lower. Just what you said.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even my Cherokee Indian friend says it might have been saying thank you, because it had taken one of the apples that we had gifted at that time.
Okay.
But yeah, yeah. So that tells me just what you're saying. That is more data to prove the point that these are very human-like. They are their own species, a humanoid type creature. Yeah, and they have their own family units, their own tribes, their own clans. The one guy up here in Sebling, he says, "Hey man, he said I was surrounded by so many of them." He said, off the top of my head, I would say it was 10 plus in this one clan. And
Wow.
so yeah, yeah. And then I hear sometimes the clans don't get along, and um yeah, I won't get into that whole story, but yeah, they had cut out their own territories,
Yeah.
and then sometimes if they encroach on each other territories, they get into it.
Yeah. It's your neighbors. You got to respect your neighbors' boundaries, right? Don't walk into your
Well,
neighbors' lawn.
yeah, and if they don't treat their lawn and I'm getting their dandelions.
Yeah. There's really no ordinance to call on that. They just got to. So,
Exactly. Well, Jake, man, thanks for all the good talk, even though I know I was blabbing a ton. Yeah, I'm just hoping we can get together in person. We've been trying for so long. I hope that happens. You are welcome on this show anytime you want. You always have great information, and yeah, you're good friends. And I appreciate you coming on, taking the time, man. I know you have a busy schedule, but I appreciate you coming on, doing an episode, and you are welcome back anytime, sir.
well, I really do appreciate it. We will definitely link up, and I'd love to get out to Waterloo. I'd really love to. I know you and I had plans to visit my original sighting location, which if we have time to do, obviously I'm still up for that.
Oh yeah, me too.
But
Me too.
whatever we can do in the future, it'd be great. And yeah, like I said, I appreciate you having me on and bringing me on to talk tonight. It's been great.
Awesome, man. I still want you for the Bigfoots of Michigan TV pilot series. We can bang out one of those episodes. That would be great as well. All right, Jake, I'm going to go ahead and put you in the green room right now. All right, everybody. That is Jake Goscicki, good friend of mine. Known for about 2.5, 3 years. He is one of the figures that helped solidify me walking down this crazy path, this crazy subject of Bigfoot and the whole paranormal world. So I really thank Jake so much. This is episode 21. To everyone out there tuning in, thank you so much for watching, for listening, and we've got so many more episodes to come. We have started filming season 3 of the Bigfoots of Michigan TV pilot series. And just always stay tuned to our YouTube channel. Check out our bigfootsofmichigan.com. If you need to get a hold of me at all, you can reach me at Bigfoots, don't forget the S, bigfootsofamerica@gmail.com. And with that said, thanks for tuning in once again. Stay tuned for the next episode, and we will see you next time. I'm going to try to get out of here